Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. We're focusing in on something pretty big for all of you out there, especially our listeners, connected with the HIV RNA test guide.
Yeah.
You know the place to go for all things HIV testing info, and there's 4,500 plus labs all over the U.S.
You bet.
Well, today we're diving into some really interesting news coming straight out of CROI 2025.
Yeah, fresh from the conference.
All about potential game changers in HIV treatment.
Right. And for everyone out there who's managing HIV or helping others who are, you already know.
Yeah.
Like current treatments, they work great, but
Mm-hmm.
finding ways to make them even less of a hassle, less frequent, more convenient, that's kind of the holy grail,
And
right?
absolutely less pills, less appointments.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So that's what we're going to dig into today. 2 brand new, long-acting, injectable antiretroviral drugs that could really shake things up.
Okay, so first up we got VH184.
Okay.
Now this one is a third-generation integrase inhibitor.
All right.
Integrase inhibitors, for folks
Yeah.
who don't know, they basically block a key step in how HIV does its thing, right?
That's right.
Stops the virus from, sneaking its genetic material into our cells.
Sneaky little bugger.
It is. But what's really cool about VH184 is they're talking about a single injection every 6 months.
Wow.
Think about that for a second.
That's huge.
That's life-changing, potentially.
Yeah, it could be a total game changer.
Yeah.
And, this early look at VH184 comes from a phase IIA trial.
Right.
22 people participated,
Okay.
early stages, right?
Yeah.
But these early trials, they're really about safety first and foremost.
Yeah, got to make sure it's safe.
Absolutely. And then they start to look at, how well it works initially.
Right, efficacy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in this case, they were looking at how well different doses of VH184 could knock down that viral load.
Yeah, because that's the measure, right?
That's the measure of how much virus is in the blood.
Right.
And the early results, they were pretty promising.
Promising in what way?
Well, they saw a rapid decline in the viral load, which is what you want.
Yeah.
At the 10 milligram dose, they saw a max drop of minus 1.17 log 10 copies per milliliter.
Okay, that's a lot of numbers. Can you break that down for me?
Sure. So basically a 1 log drop, that means the virus level decreased by 10 times.
Oh, wow. Okay, so even at the lowest dose, 10 times less virus.
Yeah, pretty impressive, right?
That's amazing.
And then get this, as they bumped up the dose, the reduction got even more impressive.
Okay.
50 milligram dose, they saw a minus 2.15 log 10 drop.
Wow.
And the highest dose, they tested 300 milligrams. That one showed a minus 2.31 log 10 reduction.
So the higher the dose, the more effective, essentially.
Yeah, that's the trend they're seeing. And that rapid and substantial decrease, that's exactly what researchers want to see. You want that virus to take a nosedive.
All right, so that was VH184. Now let's talk about VH499.
Okay, different approach with this one.
How so?
This one's being developed as a capsidase inhibitor.
Capsidase inhibitor now.
Yeah, think of the like the outer shell of the virus.
Okay.
And inhibiting it basically messes up the virus's ability to mature and spread.
So it can't make copies of itself, essentially.
Exactly.
And just like VH184, they're working on an injectable version of this one, too.
That's right. Same idea, less frequent dosing.
Okay, so what did the early trials for injectable VH499 show?
They had some good signs, too. They tried doses of 25, 100, and 250 milligrams.
Okay, good range there.
Yeah, and they saw drops in viral load across all those groups.
That's promising. So what were the actual numbers like?
All right, so for the 25 milligram dose, the max drop they saw was minus 1.8, 3 log 10 copies per milliliter.
Right.
At 100 milligrams, it was minus 1.8 log 10,
Okay.
and at 250 milligrams, minus 2.17 log 10.
So it seems like even though the biggest drop was at the lowest dose overall, it's still showing some serious antiviral action.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
And that's really what's so important here, right, for all our listeners, is this potential for taking meds way less often.
Absolutely.
Instead of daily pills, imagine just a couple injections a year.
It could be life-changing, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's less to think about. Less hassle, potentially better adherence.
Yeah, and ultimately a better quality of life.
Absolutely. But it's important to remember we're still in the early stages here.
Yeah, these are just early trials.
You need those larger, longer-term studies, the phase 3 trials.
Yeah, those are the ones that really confirm everything. The effectiveness, the safety, how well people tolerate the drugs over time.
Right, exactly. But still, these initial findings from CROI 2025, I mean, they give us a lot of hope.
Yeah, it's definitely progress in the right direction.
For sure, more convenient treatments are on the horizon.
And that's what it's all about, making HIV management as easy and seamless as possible.
Right, and that's why staying informed is so crucial.
Absolutely, especially for folks connected with the HIV RNA test guide.
Yeah.
Keeping up with these advancements, it's key to understanding how HIV treatment is evolving.
So let's recap real quick. We talked about two potential new drugs, VH184 and VH499, both long-acting injectables, both showing some pretty impressive early results in terms of reducing that viral load.
Exactly, and they really offer a glimpse into a future where managing HIV could be so much less demanding.
It's managed.
Yeah, I think revolutionizing is not an overstatement, especially when you think about the challenges so many people face with sticking to a daily pill regimen, and then there's the whole thing about drug resistance and the long-term side effects of some of the current treatments. It's a lot to deal with.
It is.
So yeah, these new drugs are definitely offering up a whole different outlook.
So let's start with VH184. Like, what is this drug exactly, and what's all the hype about?
Right. So VH184, it falls into this category of drugs called third-generation integrase inhibitors. Now, integrase inhibitors, they're already a pretty big deal in HIV treatment.
Right.
They basically work by stopping the virus from being able to, sneak its own genetic material into our cells, which is, kind of essential for the virus to replicate and spread.
Yeah.
So the thing that makes VH184 really stand out is it was specifically designed to last a really long time in the body.
Okay, so when we're talking long-acting, we're talking way less frequent than popping pills every day, right? Like, is this the injection, twice-a-year thing I've been hearing about?
You got it. That's the big idea. And start figuring out if this could actually work. They did this initial study called a phase, the Anakai clinical trial.
Oh, yeah, the clinical trials. Always a big deal in drug development, right?
Yeah, totally. Especially these early stage trials. That's where they really get to see, is this drug even safe for people to take? And are there any early signs that it might actually, be effective?
Yeah, makes sense.
So in this particular trial, they had 22 participants, and they were all randomly assigned to get different doses of VH184. Some got 10 milligrams, some 50 milligrams, and some got 300 milligrams. And then, of course, there was the placebo group, the folks who just get the inactive substance so you have something to compare to.
Yeah, the control group. So once they wrapped up this phase Anakai trial, what'd they find? Did VH184 actually lower the amount of virus in the participants' blood?
Well, the cool thing was they saw this really clear pattern. The higher the dose of VH184, the bigger the drop in what they call viral load. So the group that got the 10 milligram dose, they saw a max decrease of 1.17 log 10 copies per milliliter.
Okay.
But then when they bumped up the dose to 50 milligrams, that reduction basically doubled to 2.15 log 10 copies per milliliter.
Wow, okay.
And then with the highest dose, 300 milligrams, they saw a max drop of 2.31 log 10 copies per milliliter.
Okay, so hold on, I gotta ask. When we're talking about a log 10 reduction, what does that actually mean for someone with HIV? Help us wrap our heads around that.
All right, good question. So basically think of it like this. A 1 log 10 reduction means the amount of virus in the blood has gone down by 10 times.
Oh, okay.
So a 2 log 10 reduction means the virus is decreased by 100-fold.
Oh, I see.
And a 3 log 10 reduction, that'd be a 1,000-fold decrease. So yeah, those drops of over 2 log 10, that's a pretty big deal when it comes to reducing viral load.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective. And wasn't there something about this viral suppression happening pretty quickly after the injection, too?
Yeah, that's right. The data did show a super fast decline in the viral levels for the people who got VH184, which is really exciting.
Right.
It means the drug's getting to work, right away. And of course, these phase IA trials, they're always looking really closely at safety and how well people tolerate the drug, which is obviously super important.
For sure. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about that other drug-making waves at CROI, VH499.
Okay, VH499.
This one's a little different in how it tackles the virus, right?
Yeah, it's got a whole different mechanism of action. So VH499, it's what they call a novel capsid inhibitor.
Novel capsid inhibitor.
So imagine the HIV virus, it has this protective outer shell. It's the capsid. And this shell, it's super important for the virus to be able to replicate itself once it gets inside a human cell. So what capsid inhibitors do is they kind of mess with the structure and function of that shell.
Oh, so it can't replicate?
Right. So it basically stops the virus from multiplying.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hitting the HIV life cycle at a totally different stage compared to the integrase inhibitors like VH184.
Gotcha. So is the idea with VH499 the same as VH184? Are they trying to make this a long-acting injectable too so people don't have to think about taking meds all the time?
Yep, exactly. The goal is to give people another option for long-acting HIV treatment. which, could be a huge deal for folks who maybe aren't the best candidates for other types of antiretrovirals or just, would prefer not to deal with taking pills every day.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And just like with VH184, VH499 has gone through phase 2 trials.
Okay.
And they tested out a bunch of different dosages to see how well it worked at bringing down the viral load.
Okay, so what did those phase 2 trials show us about VH499? Like, what kind of viral load reductions did they see with the different doses?
Well, the results were definitely promising. Though it's interesting, because the relationship between the dose and how well it worked, it wasn't quite as straightforward as with VH184.
Oh, how so?
So with the 25 milligram dose, they saw a maximum viral load reduction of 1.83 log 10 copies per milliliter.
Okay.
But then with the 100 milligram dose, it was actually a little bit lower, like 1.8 log 10 copies per milliliter.
Oh, interesting. So the higher dose didn't actually work better in that case?
Yeah, which is weird, right? But then when they cranked it up to 250 milligrams, the reduction jumped up to 2.17 log 10 copies per milliliter.
Okay, so the middle dose was kind of the odd one out. Does that tell the researchers anything about how this drug's doing its thing in the body?
Absolutely. Stuff like that, that's like gold for scientists.
Yeah.
It might mean the drug gets broken down or spreads through the body differently in different concentrations, or maybe there's something else going on at the cellular level that's affecting how well it works. It really shows why these early trials are so crucial. To figure out all the little quirks of how a new drug behaves in the body and to pinpoint, like, the best dose to use in future studies.
Right, it's all about fine-tuning.
Exactly.
Now, I remember reading something super encouraging about VH499, something about, like, near total suppression of the virus in some of the people who got it. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. In a handful of the participants, particularly those who are on certain doses of VH499, the amount of HIV in their blood basically went down to levels that were, like, almost impossible to detect using our standard tests.
Wow.
So yeah, it's definitely a good sign that this drug could be a really potent weapon in the fight against HIV. And like you mentioned earlier, they're focusing on developing it as an injectable, which fits perfectly with that whole idea of making treatment less frequent.
Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit and think big picture for a sec. Assuming all these trials keep showing positive results, what kind of impact could these long-acting drugs actually have on the lives of people who are living with HIV? I mean, think about it. Going from daily pills to maybe just 2 injections a year, that's going to be huge.
It would be massive. I mean, if these drugs manage to get through all the hoops, the later stages of the clinical trials and all the regulatory stuff, and actually get approved, it could be absolutely life-changing. I mean, think about it. No more having to remember to take pills every single day.
Right.
Which would probably mean way more people sticking to their treatment plans.
Yeah.
Which then means they're keeping the virus suppressed and dodging the whole drug resistance bullet.
Totally. So beyond just, the convenience factor, are there other potential benefits that we might see with these long-acting injectables?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like we were just saying, better adherence equals lower risk of the virus becoming resistant to the medication. That's huge. But then there's also the quality of life improvement, right? Not having to constantly think about taking your meds. That could seriously free people up, mentally and emotionally. Plus, who knows, maybe these new drugs will have different side effects compared to some of the current therapies, hopefully ones that are, less intense or less frequent. But obviously, we need more research to really know for sure about all that long-term stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's still early days. So what are the next steps here? What needs to happen before these drugs can actually make it out into the world and help people?
Well, the next big hurdle is the phase 3 clinical trials.
Okay.
These are like the big leagues of clinical trials. Way more participants. They're designed to really confirm that the drug works and is safe, like they saw in the earlier trials, but on a much bigger scale with a more diverse group of people.
Okay.
And they often compare the new drug to the current gold standard treatment too. So it's really putting it to the test.
So if you had to guesstimate, like, when might we realistically see these treatments become available, assuming everything keeps going smoothly with the research and all that?
Yeah, it's always tough to say for sure with drug development. It's a long and winding road. But, if you look at the usual timelines for these kinds of trials and the whole FDA approval process, some folks are thinking that if all goes well, we could potentially see VH184 and VH499 on the market around 2027.
Okay.
But yeah, that's just a ballpark. It could be sooner, could be later. Depends on how the research goes and how quickly the FDA moves.
So For our listeners out there who are living with HIV and hearing about all this, what's the key takeaway right now?
I think the most important thing to remember is this. All of this is still very much in the research phase. So yeah, these early findings are super exciting. It's great to be hopeful, but we really need to see what those big long-term phase 3 trials tell us.
Yeah.
And we got to get the full picture on effectiveness and long-term safety before we get too ahead of ourselves. And we also need to see how these drugs perform out in the real world, in different settings and with different populations. And of course, we need to figure out how they stack up cost-wise compared to the treatments we already have.
Yeah. All important stuff. Now, for folks who are interested in maybe getting access to these treatments sooner, like while they're still being studied, is there anything they can do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're living with HIV and you're intrigued by these long-acting options, the best thing you can do is talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
They can give you personalized advice and let you know about any clinical trials that are recruiting participants. That's usually how you can get access to these investigational treatments before they hit the market.
Great advice. And hey, for anyone listening who's thinking about getting tested for HIV, don't forget you can hop over to our website, www.hivrenatusguide.com.
Yeah, we're here for you.
We've got info on more than 4,500 testing labs across the U.S., so you can find a spot that's convenient for you and get tested confidentially and quickly.
All right, so wrapping things up here, I think it's safe to say that what we've learned about from CROI 2025, it's a really big deal for the future of HIV treatment. The possibility of having these long-acting therapies like VH184 and VH499, it could totally change the game for so many people. Make treatment simpler, improve quality of life. It's pretty exciting stuff.
It is. We want to hear what you guys think, though. What are your thoughts on all of this? Head over to the comments and let's chat. And if you found this deep dive into the latest HIV research helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to HIV RNA Test Guide so you can stay up to date on all the news in HIV research and testing.
Until next time, stay informed, stay healthy.
See ya.